there is a truth that even as a leader, like you have to remain in the environment that you were created for and the place that you are going to thrive. Interesting, if this fish is a predator in his own environment, when he came out of that environment, it meant death. And sometimes we're sold this idea of, we got to just break out of everything we know.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes to our own detriment. So there is truth to that. There is wisdom. There is safety to say, this is my environment. This is what I've been created to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to thrive within it. So do we always have to be chasing a light, if you will, that is not meant for us?
Yeah. Well, hey, you're watching What Was That About? Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. My name is Moses Khan. I am with Dr. Tony Soldano, lead pastor here at All People's Church. How you doing?
Well, listen, my shoulder hurts because we have been shoveling.
Oh, man.
Wow, major storms.
We moved to a condo. And
you were wise. You were wise.
The perfect time.
You were wise. You know what I understand? When the plow goes down your street, why can't they just lift it and avoid your driveway?
There are actually plows that I've seen now in Toronto that have an extra thing to clean people's driveways.
I have a theory. I think these plow drivers are angry because they're up at night and they're going to make every homeowner pay for their nocturnal issues.
It is the worst.
Anyways,
yes.
It was heavy.
Dealing with a lot of crazy snow.
I must say it was heavy. But
speaking of things that are happening currently, have you seen this fish story of the angler fish?
We're going to talk about fish?
This monster fish. Have you seen Finding Nemo? You know what I'm talking about. It's got giant teeth, a light, and it lives in the depth of the ocean.
Deep in the dark.
Yeah, in the dark. And so it somehow made its way up to the surface and died, obviously, because it's out of its, natural climate and pressure and the rest of it. And some people say that maybe it was ill or whatever. But there is this emotional response right now. Gen Z is weeping because they have built an emotional connection with this monster fish, and have cried over this fish coming to the sea.
To the surface.
Yeah. Poetic comments like, on my last day, I will go see the sun. So we want to talk about this fish.
Now, if you haven't seen it, this is like a monster.
Oh, yeah.
Fish.
It's a very ugly, scary looking thing.
And it's got some serious teeth and most likely a predator in its own environment. But here on the surface, of course, we have to have a heart. I think that's what it said,
Yeah.
Even though it was a predator and a killer, you have to have a heart.
That's right.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So we're weeping. All right.
Yeah. Well, they might even make a Disney movie out of this. So get ready.
Of course.
Get ready.
Is the fish transgender? If Disney is...
That's why... No, never mind.
Wow.
That's an offline comment. All right.
Hate comments coming now.
Honestly. But listen, we want to talk about this fish because I think there's a couple of things we can talk about here. It's funny as it is. In terms of, leadership. And I mean, a lot of people are saying, wow, what a brave and courageous fish to swim up to the top, even though it meant its death. What's that Greek story? Is it Icarus? Who flew too close to the sun, right? Yeah.
And
died.
Oh.
Right?
I don't know this story. This mythology?
Greek mythology.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why did he do that?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
He was attracted to the sun.
But he died.
He died, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a similar story. It's poetic and quote unquote.
Why didn't he travel there by night? He would have been okay.
Okay, people don't know that.
Wow.
That's a funny story. That's
Yeah,
like a meme video.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about this from a leadership perspective here. Let's gain some leadership insights from this ugly looking fish.
Yes.
Let's talk about the importance of staying in the lane you were created for. In the culture, the climate you were created for. Because I think there's leadership principles there that, you're a leadership guy and that you can kind of maybe bring forth here to talk about the importance of, knowing you, knowing your lane, knowing how God has wired you and built you and to stay within that.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of thoughts. We celebrate what, that you break out, that you break through, and a lot of, innovation occurs because people are willing to outthink, think outside the box, if you will.
Yeah.
But there is truth to the fact that you also need to remain in your environment. And whatever possessed this particular fish to come out of its own environment, so its own habitat. So most likely the water pressure, the light.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they say we know more about space than the oceans.
Yeah.
And, here we have, we serve the creator of knowing everything. I mean, he knows what's down there. I mean, we could actually even talk about Leviathan, who's supposed to be down there as well. And the Bible says eventually he's coming up. But apart from that, there is a truth that even as a leader, like you have to remain in the environment that you were created for and the place that you are going to thrive. Interesting, if this fish is a predator in his own environment, when he came out of that environment, it meant death. And sometimes we're sold this idea of, we got to just break out of everything we know.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes to our own detriment. So there is truth to that. There is wisdom. There is safety to say, this is my environment. This is what I've been created to do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to thrive within it. So do we always have to be chasing a light, if you will, that is not meant for us?
Yeah. And I think there's something to, chasing the light that is meant for us, chasing what we consider to be autonomy, freedom, that sometimes can be incredibly costly. So number one, I think you have to know your lane. You have to know your lane. You have to know the way you're wired. You have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. But I think maybe is sometimes breaking out of your lane the result of wanting to be more than you actually are, or wanting to do too much or be too much than actually who you are and what you have the capacity to be and do.
Yeah. Sometimes I think, people just get bored. They get bored within their environment, and then they feel like they have to go and explore. And here again, I want to just say that there are positive things about that. However, there are detrimental things. And so, maybe one of the questions we should ask ourselves as leaders is, what is the motivator? What is the motivator? Now, this fish, we don't know. Was it sick? Was it, did it just get to the place where it couldn't turn back and all it could do is keep going forward? And here again, I speak about wisdom. Now, we serve a leader who came to die. Yeah. And so that's different than something ending in death.
Right.
He came to die.
Yes.
That was his purpose, so that he would rise from the dead and then, of course, give us life. So there's a little bit of difference there, because even in Christ, we see that he remains in his lane.
Yeah.
Death was his lane. Can we say it that way? But this idea that I'm just going to journey anywhere because, I'm going to be a trendsetter. And sometimes that works out well, and sometimes it just doesn't work out well at all. Now, we love, when we talk about trendsetters, right? We love to celebrate that. I guarantee you that is the minuscule of people that, set those trends. They break barriers, if you will, and I'm talking in a positive way. Yeah. What no one ever wants to tell you about is the failures, the heartaches, the agonies of people maybe that tried to do things that they shouldn't have done, that maybe lost relationships, money, family, crashed and burned for no reason, chasing that elusive dream that maybe they weren't created for.
Wow.
And yet they were going after something. Jeez. So it doesn't always end well.
Doesn't always end well. Yeah. Well, Jesus says something about calculating the cost, right? A builder calculates the cost. Somebody going to war calculates the cost. So there definitely is that. Have you really taken, an assessment of what this is going to cost, and if this is the right thing for you? Because, and we're using this story of the fish kind of as a, as a springboard. Not that it's the perfect analogy and whatever, because I think there's facets here that we can look at. Right. Because on the other side of things, in terms of leadership, sometimes, and I'm flipping the script here, but sometimes, you get to walk in what somebody else paid for. Right? And so someone else paved the way. It cost them way more than it cost you, because they were willing to be courageous and brave and, explore the unknown, if you will.
Right.
And so there is that aspect of leadership too.
Sure, but here's what you have to ask yourself: am I wired that way? So
That's good.
Am I wired? Let's go back to that term. Am I a trendsetter? Am I a trailblazer? Am I wired that way? And then am I willing to pay the cost of that? So as you were speaking, I had a young leader with me years ago, and he caught on to some idea that he got online and decided to buy a ticket. He went to California. He was going to be trained in this whole thing. It has to do with sales and intercoms and whatever at the time. And I said to him, he had to raise the money. He didn't even have the money, but he was going to succeed. And it wound up being a total disaster, a total disaster of lost money, lost time, a lot of disappointment, a lot of agony. But I remember saying to him, not that I want to hold you back, but it's like, you're not wired this way.
Wow.
This is not who you are. This is not your personality. This is not your giftings. And so, he took it as I was trying to hold him back. Well, I was trying to hold him back from a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is not you.
Yeah.
This is just not the way you are created. And, had to wind up coming back and then try and regain himself and get his feet back, and then people, they get hurt and they hurt others around them. So one of the questions really you should ask yourself is this the way that God has designed me? Am I a dreamer? Can I live by curiosity? And I would say this: what stage in my life am I at? Now, he was a younger guy, so maybe it was a great lesson to learn, and he could pay it when he was younger in his.
Sure, he could afford the risk.
He could afford the risk. He wasn't married at the time, whatever.
Yeah.
But sometimes people just catch on to things, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to be that person," and you're just not made that way.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
So you can become so ambitious that maybe you become blind to the reality of your own limitations and the way you're wired. And sometimes I think that might come from envy and coveting, what you've seen in others and what others have been able to accomplish, and you're not humble enough to go, hey, I'm wired this way. But I think the funny thing is, I think you're most fruitful when you actually tap into your natural wiring. That is going to be your most fruitful self, is when you're actually able to let go of the comparison, let go of the envy and the coveting and forget how other people do it, and actually tap into your wiring. I think that's when you become fruitful.
Yeah. A friend of mine I had a great relationship with, and, he was actually a coach and a mentor to me. He would always say, this statement to me: learn to live and fight another day. Learn to live and fight another day. I think about this fish. Was there nothing within him instinctually that said, hey, learn to live to fight another day. Turn back. You are clearly out of your zone.
Yeah.
Like you and I, we're not great swimmers, right? And so, there's this internal thing inside you that goes,
don't go that far.
we've gone
deep.
We've gone too deep. We've gone far enough.
Yeah.
And something says to us, you better turn back, or something bad is going to happen to you. Now, what I hope people are not hearing, for those that are designed and wired, we're not telling you to stop being curious or stop dreaming, but I believe there are these internal borders, these internal boundaries within us that says, do you really want to die on this day? And are there signs that say, turn back, whether it's from initiatives, endeavors, sometimes relationships, that then you need to say, hey, the alarms are going off, the stop signs are going off, and maybe it's time to retreat. And hopefully by this program today, we're warning some people.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I'm thinking first of all, that's fantastic. But I'm thinking of so many people who fail to read the quote unquote warning signs. What is that people can't, you've been doing life for a long time, leading for a long time. Like
did you just call me old?
Called you wise.
Thank you. Experience.
What is that, despite the alarms blaring and the lights going off, people aren't able to do that?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's just stubbornness, right? Because even if we're ignorant and we're not sure, normally, whether it's internal or we have people around us that will give us indicators, and I give indicators to people a lot. That's part of my life. That's part of my role. And I just watch people just plow on through, you know? And I say to myself, okay, then you are either a glutton for punishment or you are stubborn. And the Bible tells us, by the way, that stubbornness is like witchcraft. It is that whole idea of rebellion. Now, there is a fine tension between determination, what people call determination, and then we kind of go into this area of stubbornness and rebellion. And you know, this whole concept about, well, you're going to do it and you're going to make it and nobody can stop you. That's what we feed today. That's what is celebrated. And it happens at the detriment of a lot of people. And I can tell you, Pastor Moses, more people, more than not, actually wind up burning and crashing than, hey, I broke through and this worked out so well and you were wrong. You know, and I just think it's a lot of it is just stubbornness, just unwillingness to yield and unwillingness to to learn. Now, some people may say, well, isn't that the way we grow? Yes, I guess it depends how far you fall from. Because some falls can kill you. Right? Learn to live another day. Some things, sure, they're minor and you learn, and maybe you've lost some money, you've lost some time and some energy. Some decisions are absolutely catastrophes. And that is the heartbreaking part of it.
No, this is good. So you're saying, hey, learn to understand how you're actually wired. Read the signs. Definitely consider, your wiring in the stage of your life.
Right.
As it relates to risks. That is so important.
Pastor Moses, we're fairly risky. We do things, we really launch out in ministry, and ministry is a very, mostly it's a very conservative type of arena. We're maybe a little bit better at risk taking, but every mountain climber will harness themselves to the mountain so that if they slip and fall, you're not falling to your death. Maybe you're falling 20, 30 feet. 50 feet, whatever the rope is. But eventually you're going to get back on it and you're going to start climbing again. And that's what we're talking about.
That's good, yeah.
That okay, listen, you're a mountain climber, you're a risk taker. Harness yourself to something and someone that is bigger than you are, so that if you do slip and fall, you don't ultimately die. This fish lost its complete direction. Lost its sense of, here's where I belong. No indicators to turn around. And what was the whole point? What was the whole point? Now some people, the bleeding hearts will say, oh, we would have never known this fish was down there. Well, okay. But the fish is dead.
Yes. Very good.
So I would say, know who you are, harness yourself. And live to fight another day. To fight another day.
So good. Just as we wrap up here, kind of a fun little question here. Things coming out of the deep.
Yes.
You mentioned the Leviathan that the Bible talks about.
Wow.
And
other creatures.
I saw this one person post, forget all the crying and the emotional, attachment to the story. What is this deep sea creature doing coming out of the deep sea and up to the surface? And is this going to be something we're going to see? Deep sea creatures come up to the surface. Be warned.
You know what's strange about that? Even I saw this other video where, even in the ocean, people go, "Oh, it's going to go in, knee deep." Now sharks are coming right to the surface.
Crazy.
Have barriers been broken?
Maybe
down there that we're not aware of? And I believe that what the Bible talks about are, it's not just a metaphor. These are real creatures. And isn't it amazing how even in movies where they could talk about the Godzillas and the strange beasts that kind of, they create cinema out of, and yet the Bible goes into great detail about these creatures.
It's wild. Anyways, we'll see what happens.
Wow, maybe this little fish was chased up here.
Oh, jeez. Oh, man. Well, listen, thank you for joining us for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this fun conversation. around this fish, but more importantly around leadership. Live to fight another day. I love that so much. Pastor, thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, listen, subscribe, do all that good stuff, like this video, comment below what you enjoyed out of today's episode. As always, we'll see you next time. God bless.